Hello and welcome to Not Just African. My name is Inyoma. I'm the host of this podcast, and this is my first video recording. And today I'm joined with my friends who I'm going to let introduce themselves. So we'll start with...
Hi, my name is Courtney. I'm an educator in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name is Cheryl. I'm a speech language pathologist in Riverside.
My name is Dana, and I'm a healthcare administrator.
My name is Ogechi, and I'm a registered nurse.
My name is Gina, and I'm an attorney.
My name is Deanna. I'm an occupational therapist from Nashville.
Come on now.
And live. Okay.
My name is Naisha Richardson, and I'm a health information services professional.
My name is Nihoma, and I'm a case manager.
Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
Almost everyone has been on the podcast before except for... Yes.
Oh, really?
The three of them.
Oh,
Yes, so welcome.
No, never included.
There's a reason. Usually I'm exclusive to people who are of recent African descent. But today we have a topic that encompasses everyone around the African diaspora, and that is about colorism and what our experiences have been with it across the diaspora and within different communities. So we just want to talk about that today and share our thoughts on it. So I'm going to let my sister Dogechi go first because she has some stories to share about when we were growing up with the difference in colors between us that I actually don't remember at all.
Okay, so growing up, there are four of us, Dims, Ihoma, myself, Inyoma, and our little brother, Chingo. And all three of them were of a certain hue that was lighter than my hue. And I didn't have a problem with it. You know, growing up, my mom didn't necessarily, I didn't feel like any of us was different because of the way that we looked. But when we would go out, we get a lot of comments, particularly directed to myself. Well, Inyoma and I are 1 year apart. And so my mom would dress us alike and our hair would always be identical.
Always.
But she had a lot of hair and it was like dirty blonde and she was definitely a lot lighter. So there were a lot of comments almost daily. Wow, oh, you two are sisters? Wow. Oh my goodness, she's so pretty. Oh wow. And then, then there was me. And so to be honest, I didn't realize what it was at the time. I didn't think necessarily, oh, it's colorism. To me, I was just like, well, I guess I just look a certain way. And I was, very skinny and she just looked generally healthier from what people would say. And so it was like, wow, Ochorocha Mama, meaning she's light-skinned and beautiful.
In Igbo.
In Igbo. And then there was me, and it was like, oh, wow, okay. Praise God, hallelujah. So that's some of my experiences that I remember growing up.
Which I have no memory of, just to...
Yeah.
Because I always looked up to her like my big sister, constantly. So it was never even a thing. In our family, it wasn't a thing at all.
It wasn't a thing.
It was just outside.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any other experiences from yourselves or within your own family members?
Oh, most definitely. I think I was prominent when I was in high school and middle school because kids really don't like to see other dark kids. I think being dark was a problem when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm African American. So it's like if there was a dark person in class, then they're like, oh, Blackie's here. Or it's just like there are so many derogatory names that if you're dark skinned, you would be called, and dark skinned girls are not pretty. I have one friend that actually said, I think you guys know this person. But he said, we were having this conversation once a few years ago, and he was saying that, he's light-skinned. He's like, oh, when I was growing up, I didn't want to date dark-skinned girls or black girls, period, because they're dirty, because they're dark.
Wow.
And just hearing that made my heart hurt. And, as a teacher, I think about my students, and there are I have so many dark kids, and it's always like a joke, like, oh, you're so black that this and this, there are all of these jokes, and a lot of my students laugh it off, but that's eroding, your self-esteem. It's doing so many things to you. And even when I was growing up, my mom would be like, oh, get out of the sun. You're going to be too dark, don't get too dark during the summer because of all of these preconceived notions that we have about being dark-skinned. So growing up, that was something that I saw. Now that I'm a teacher, I still see it. It still happens. Colorism is a big thing. And even I have a circle of friends that are not black. But there's I'm a black person in that circle, and then I have another friend that is black and he's dark skinned. But all of these, white people, these Asian people that are in our group, every time we take a picture at night, they don't know about lighting, you know, like they don't light him specifically so that he can be seen. And they have all of these jokes like, oh, like, where is this person? We can't see him in the picture. And, you know, they all laugh about it. And I'm like, that's not funny. Like, you don't know what you're doing or what you're saying right now. You think it's a joke, but it's actually, you know, it can be detrimental to someone.
Right.
So that's my personal experience with colorism.
You know, I think it's really interesting because growing up in the South, I thought that we only struggle with it on our region of the world. Like to hear that, you know, clearly it's not just on one side of the U.S. So growing up specifically in Atlanta, Georgia, obviously that's a predominantly black city for the most part, depending on what area that you're in. But even still, like we definitely felt like the effects of just light skin being better, just to be completely frank. Growing up in my specific church, I had there were six of us that grew up together, my childhood friends, and 3 of them happened to be lighter skinned, and the other 3 of us were darker. I don't consider myself to be super dark skinned, but in that context, I was dark skinned. And then I had another friend who was really dark skinned. So I remember one specific story growing up, like the boys at church would like, you know, just kind of like rank us in different type of forums. So one that I remember was like they would rank us based on toast. So like the lightest skinned person would be like just bread, and then, you know, heaven forbid, you know, the darkest person was burnt, you know. And obviously at that time, you know, as kids we just process it as, oh, ha ha ha. Well, it wasn't funny to us, it was funny to them, number one. But just looking at it from a grander scheme, it's just like, wow, like we were so young. Like the fact that they even had the mind to, first of all, rank us based on our color. I mean, that's really what it was. And, you know, obviously I wasn't on the winning side of that, so to say. And like my friend who was very much darker than I, the one that you know, she definitely got the brunt of that for sure. So I think it was just hard. And I think, you know, even growing up now as what I would consider myself to be a young adult, I think it's hard to rid some of those things. I know that in the South, I think it's kind of flipped. It's kind of like, quote, the darker the berry now. But I still think that there are definitely like undertones of that colorism in our society and our culture, where we celebrate lighter skin, we celebrate lighter eyes. That was a big thing growing up. Oh, she got hazel eyes. Okay. Like, and you know, it's lighter. That's just the end of it. So yeah, I think it's interesting to hear that some of those same experiences are not just regional, that you guys experience that too.
I think they're universal in the
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just to juxtapose that, because I definitely characterize this as a California thing. I know it is absolutely very much a California thing, the light skin versus dark skin. And being that I'm more on the brown skin side of the light, apparently, like, it's kind of like you're stuck in the middle in limbo, you know, land. And depending on what area of California I was in, I got a different story. So if I was in Northern California, I was called red bone, light skin, you know, all the more positive connotations associated with being light skinned. But when I came down to Southern California, it's like, oh, you're not light skinned, you're brown skin, or you're dark skinned. Or I knew 2 gentlemen specifically who would make it very plain, like in my presence, they would never date dark skinned women. And or even like, they're like, oh, if she's not light skinned, she needs to be this color light skinned in order for me to date her. And I'm just kind of like, so am I light skinned? Am I dark skinned? You know, it was like living in limbo land. I think it just really, people don't understand how internally detrimental that can be. Just speaking that out into the atmosphere, not realizing that that actually applies to me. So, you know.
So for us who are in Nigerian cultures, say for Igbo land, Dems, you were telling me that back in the day before colonialism, it was preferable for women to be really dark skinned with a gap tooth. That was the standard of beauty, right? And then
have a lot of hair.
In some parts of Igbo land.
In some parts of Igbo land, which we're Igbo, the 3 of us. So we have Nigerian, Ghanaian, Trini, and African Americans here. So and Haitian, sorry, Haitian and African American. And then once colonialism happened, it switched so that now our ethnic group, the Igbos, are like the chiefs of bleaching, of bleaching your skin.
It's an epidemic
It's
in Nigeria.
dreadful, and you look terrible. I haven't seen one person who bleached and actually looked like a regular human being. You look terrible. Anybody who's bleaching, I'm sorry, but
Not
you do.
just the looks, but it's
You-
very
and it's
unhealthy
very
for
bad
your
for
skin.
you. No, seriously, it never looks
yeah.
right. You have a gray or purple
Yeah.
cast permanently, and then you have to keep bleaching your skin.
Not only that, it predisposes you to
So skin cancer.
Right. So it's
But then, for us, it was colonialism that brought that on, which happens in a lot of other countries. So like Asians, Hispanics, everybody bleaches because of that. For African Americans, it was slavery that did that.
Oh my goodness. So I'm thinking of a story from school. So I have students this year, 10th graders in 2019. They categorized each other based on where they would be if they were a slave.
Wow.
So, you're a
Yeah.
house inward.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're saying that here.
That's
You're a house
sensitive.
one. You will be in the field. You
Field.
will be this. You will be that. And they would go around and they would say, "Hey, what's up, house inward?"
Wow.
Yeah, like they would literally do
Wow.
that. And so we had to intervene and like have like a lesson about like why do you think that this is okay? Like you're walking around, and you're categorizing people, but like why? Where did that come from? And why do you think that this is okay? So in 2019, that's what our high school students are doing.
It's just an unfortunate situation. Cheryl, what's it like with your family, where you have like your sister is lighter skinned? She looks more like your mom, and you have more of the tone of the skin color of your dad. What was it like with your family?
Within my family, there was never any real issue with it per se. It's extended family who made comments here and there like, "Oh, you're so dark." It's like, I know this.
Well, thank you.
Or you and your sister, or
Right.
it's interesting. Black people will say, "You and your sister look nothing alike," and then other people of other races will ask us, "Are you guys twins?" So it's just so interesting how people view color
Yeah.
within the Black race and then outside of the Black race. And I'm grateful that my parents never made it an issue or a thing, but it's definitely something that was constantly in front of me growing up, especially here in California. And it wasn't until I actually went to school in the East Coast that I learned to love my skin.
Because you saw other people who had similar skin colors and who were more like accepting, or what?
Because there's a level of realness, there's a level of being proud of being Black and not just wanting to be whitewashed or there's a pride that the East Coast has about being Black, where you value Black features, you value what makes us a unique people, as opposed to, I would say, more on the Western side, like California, where it's very materialistic and it praises European features. And I think it's very disheartening and very sad that we as a Black community have bought into the lies that the white culture has taught us and now perpetuate it even more than white people at this point.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like if I was a white person looking in, I would laugh because we've taken their lies and we've run with it.
Yeah.
So
It's so funny. It's like if a cop is trying to shoot a Black person, he's not thinking, "Oh, they're light skinned. I'm gonna just hold off on that for now."
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
Black is Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy because even algorithms that we use, like on Google or Pinterest or whatever, like all of those algorithms are like European. So it's like if you're Googling something or you're like looking up something on Pinterest, like they're going to show you the standard that is white. So you're not going to see a lot of Asian results or Black results or Hispanic results. You're going to see what is predominant.
If I can add to that too, I think for me, like even though I grew up in a city that I still think to this day celebrates Black culture, it wasn't until I went to a Black Christian HBCU in the South that I realized like, yo, like it's dope to be Black. You know what I mean? Like it's, all the wonderful things that we think of now. But I think that it took literally till my college years. So kind of thinking retrospectively, I'm like, man, like I lived a whole childhood, I don't think jaded. I think I had a healthy childhood. And I, to your point, I think God for just my personal household. I think that, you know, I was celebrated for who I was. So I'm thankful for that. But just from a societal context, it definitely wasn't something that I stepped into until I had my personal HBCU experience where, you know, sure, there was some, you know, temperatures of colorism, but I think at the end of the day, like, we're all Black for the most part. We're all from different regions of the world, but at the end of the day, we share this, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's something to be celebrated. So,
Do you think it affects women more than men, the colorism
Absolutely.
debate?
I think on the male side, they deal with colorism in the sense that light-skinned guys are probably viewed as less masculine or less manly.
Hashtag light skin.
But I don't think it carries the same weight
Yeah.
and the same power that it does within the female arena, just because we judge women so much on their appearance in general.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to dating in the Black with Black women, even Black men prefer the lighter skinned Black women. So the darker you are, I mean, it's changing a little bit now, but it's generally always been, even in Nigeria, if you're lighter, you have more prospects. I remember this girl in boarding school, and I went to boarding school in Nigeria for high school. She was not very attractive at all.
My gosh,
I'm not trying to put her down. She was not, but she was very light skinned, and everybody thought she was just beautiful. And I would look at her and be like, I don't know how you guys are looking at her, but she's not beautiful. She's just super light skinned, but everybody loved that, and that's why people bleach, especially women. Women bleach way more than men in Nigeria, and I think that's kind of across the board because you want to be attractive. You know, women want to have a partner, and the more light-skinned you are, the more attractive you are, and then you'll get a partner. Even when I went to Kenya briefly for a few weeks, the village that I stayed in, there were women there who were bleaching because they're very, very dark and beautifully dark. I just love seeing the rich darkness of their skin tones. But women were bleaching, and because of how dark they were turning a weird orange hue, not even light. And they were looking just bad, generally. And it's like, yeah, you're more beautiful. And they considered me really light-skinned over there. And I'm like, wow, because they were so dark. But they were like, yeah, I just want to be like you. No, you're beautiful as you are. But it's because of that. And they were colonized as well.
Yeah.
So the lighter you are, the better for, at least for marriage purposes.
I think it's funny that right now bleaching is such a huge thing, but yet you look at white culture and they're tanning, doing lip fillers and doing all this other stuff, and doing implants and everything else. And it's like I feel like the white people got over it, and why are we still struggling with this? And I know there's still racism and all that. I'm not dismissing that at all. But I feel like we should be far ahead than where we are right now.
It's funny because I was talking to one of my male friends, and he's chocolate, and he was saying how a lot of girls would not want to date him because they didn't want to have dark-skinned kids. And I was like, I didn't even know it affected men. And he's like, yeah, it actually does. But on the flip side, it's literally what you were saying, is that a lot of people do consider lighter-skinned men more effeminate for some reason, which doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how your hue has to do with...
I think it goes back to slavery in terms of, from an African-American standpoint at least. Like you were saying, the lighter-skinned people were in the house. They were, basically, they didn't, have any information about them. They were told exactly what to do. If you were out working, you were strong, you were not necessarily independent, but those are the ones who we see in the media were viewed as workhorses, as beasts, as, those are going to be able to, if they decided to take care of your family or revolt or what have you. If you're working in the house, you're most likely being treated well. You don't have the best things.
Well,
right. I mean, that's obviously a relative
term.
Right. But you're definitely being looked at as, maybe you got to learn to read, God forbid, but there are certain things that you were looked at as doing inside the house that you wouldn't be doing outside.
I think of Frederick Douglass. Like, he was light skinned. He was like halfway,
yeah,
right?
He was,
and he did so much for abolition. And I think he was an abolitionist, and he did so much for, even the women's movement. Like, he did so much. But he was still a slave, and he was light skinned. But he learned to read because he was in the house, you know,
Right.
like he was half white, like he
Yeah.
had all of those opportunities. And I think still here we see light-skinned people as having way more opportunities. I had a student a couple years ago, he's light-skinned. He wrote an essay. He did a really great job about how light-skinned people are more beautiful and they have more opportunities. He did all of the research that he needed to do, and he legit proved his point. But that just goes to show that, I mean, historically, just like what you're saying, like, yeah, you're going to get more opportunities if you're light-skinned.
To your point, Sherelle, about how you kind of alluded to the fact that white people have gotten over it, maybe, and we dwell so much on it. I think about some of the ways that we in this group, or I'll speak for myself, are very, very, very much culpable. I mentioned at the onset of the podcast that I had a certain experience growing up, but I don't know for sure that it affected me as much as what I see other people, like how much it's affected other people. As I've been sitting here, reflecting on that. However, I think that coupled with maybe other things that had to do with appearance, just in general, certainly affected me in the ways that I view myself, and certain thoughts that I have towards myself that are so deeply ingrained that I don't even realize I have until I'll maybe say them out loud that you guys have caught me in. But I think that there's certain people where for them their color, perhaps they're darker than I am, their color was such a huge factor in their lives that it affects them so much. I'm saying all of that to say, because my experience was not so profound and life-changing, I joke about colorism. Or I don't joke about colorism, but I make jokes maybe not constantly, but I make a lot of jokes about people of different colors, because for me it's not not that deep. Because I'm not offended by it per se. However, I think about some of our friends that are lighter, and I wonder if this is a good time to share, where we start having these conversations, like what it makes you feel like when everyone around you is darker, or maybe they've had a different experience than you have, and do you feel like maybe I can't be a part of this conversation? Maybe I'm part of the problem, or like, shoot, it ain't my fault. I didn't choose the skin I was born in. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I wonder if us being free and saying these things and just like joking about it, like what it makes our lighter skinned brothers and sisters feel like.
Literally, everybody looks at me at once.
No, and honestly, Gina, I think that
Because we joke around Gina
all the
a lot.
time, all the time. And the funny thing is that both of you used to be so much lighter. One summer in Florida changed everything. But like but really, truly, like you guys would have been in that same category. Yeah, y'all was light.
The baby pictures are really continue.
So I'm just saying though, like I wonder what it makes you feel like when we have these conversations, or when we joke around.
I think that a little context could be helpful in terms of that question. And like, I'm from a really big family, so jokes don't faze me. It's like we tease each other all the time. And so my family, like, I think your family, as you were saying when you were little, is like, I have 4 siblings. All of us are different colors. 3 of us are relatively light skinned. I have recently found out that everybody views me to be the lightest. I didn't grow up thinking that. But apparently, yeah, but in my mind, that's not how I saw myself. So that could also be a factor in my experience. I just didn't see myself like that. I still don't understand you guys' comments on my skin color, because I do not see myself like that. And then 2 of my siblings are darker skinned. And so my experience with colorism, or just with being light skinned, like I said, for one, it wasn't something I really put much thought into as a child. I think I more had thoughts about it in relation to one of my sisters who was brown skinned or darker skinned than me and my other sister. And she often felt as if people viewed her as not being related to us, which I always was like, what are you talking about? We look so much alike. Everybody knows we're siblings. But because of her skin color, she always felt outside of us in the eyes of others. And so I think like that has informed the way I feel. And so I don't take any offense to your comments, nor do I feel outside of the conversation. But I do think that with anything about physical appearance, it's like when people comment on the things that you cannot change about yourself, it's kind of like, and what do you want me to do?
Right.
It's like, okay, cool. I'm lighter skinned. Obviously, the comments in this group are not coming from a place of malice or a place, I don't think, of jealousy or any kind of self-resentment. Like, it's all jokes. But when those comments have come from places of like, ooh, look at you, you're lighter skinned, like, good on you. It's like, okay, thanks, Mom, for the genetic combination turning out as it did. I don't know what to say to, like, how can you compliment someone on something they literally cannot control?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I tan and then my tan fades, and then I'm 8 different colors during the course of the year. Who knows what it will be today? So it doesn't really affect me in the sense that I feel outside of the conversation, but I do think that if we want to have an inclusive conversation, then people who experience colorism more so, like, because you're darker skinned, people view you in a certain way. When you're approaching people who do not have that same experience, you have to approach it very inclusively. You know, it's like you can't dismiss their experience or their role in shaping a new culture because they're light skinned. It's kind of like, oh, you're light skinned, like you don't know, like you've always gotten this, you know, wonderfulness, and it's like, nah, you know, if I wear a melanin popping shirt like Cheryl had on earlier today, I'll be like, but
it's still
my melanin could be popping.
Come
My
on,
melanin. But I think it's kind of like we just go through these cultural shifts, and it's like people are excluded at different times. So whereas, like you said, now it's like black or the berry. It's like true, like people are all about like dark skin, like all these things, and it's like now you isolate a whole nother group. And even though it's like you're celebrating something that was once put down, and so it feels good, it's like, yeah, but you're still playing into the same narrative that literally makes no sense because all of us are black. And like you said, there is no one, we shouldn't have any defining lines, but nobody outside of this community looks at us and is like, okay, when the time of trouble arrives, whatever you internet land people think the time of trouble is, it's like, when it arrives, there will be a demarcation, and it's not that you, lighter skinned person, 5 shades from her, will be over here. You will be, no, y'all minority people, y'all black people, y'all this, y'all that have been othered will be on one side. And so it's kind of like, no matter how we shape what's in and what's out, if it's divisive, it's divisive. And I think in this group, as I said at the outset, it's like we're very fortunate to have very close relationships where we know each other's intentions about the things. And so, like, we can joke with each other without it. Well, at least I can say for myself. I don't know, maybe you guys go home and cry at night. But, like, we can joke with each other and go, and we know that it's just love. Like, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. It's not serious. You know, when we get in public, we watch ourselves more carefully. But it's like... Sometimes, you know, some of us slip. But we try to. But it's just like we need to change the narrative within ourselves for both ends of the spectrum. Like, light can't be good, it can't be bad. Dark can't be good, it can't be bad. Like, it both are beautiful equally.
I was
They're just
asking,
different.
just for conversation, obviously we know each other well enough to know, you know, to have had these conversations before. But the fact that somebody is light-skinned doesn't mean that you can dismiss their entire experience.
Oh, yeah, like, I'm black in every space that I'm in. There's no special light-skinned path that I get. But I'm saying,
even though I was darker than the 3 of my siblings growing up, and those comments were made a lot, there were other comments that were made that affected me a lot more than being dark-skinned. It's like, let's go down the list. So I was saying that to say just for us to be mindful and to be conscious of the way that we interact, and even your high school students that are going around, you know, making those jokes. Perhaps to them it's like, oh, those are my friends. Like, it's whatever, it's funny, and I can see myself laughing at those jokes. I've certainly made those jokes before, you know, to be honest. I have. Like, seriously, because to me it's like, it's whatever. But like, as Courtney mentioned, you don't know whose experience was so different that would affect them, and maybe they are going home at night to cry.
Now, Dana, you have, real quick, you have Chinese in your family. So has there been any, like, extended families, what I mean? Your mother's grandfather?
My mother's grandfather
was Chinese. Yeah. So was there any experience with that within, like, your extended family, who are the ones that have Chinese and full Chinese right now?
I would say no. I think what's unique about Trinidad is that it really is a melting pot, and there are a lot of different cultures that are incorporated within that. Yeah. Of course, I feel like you'll always have people that have preferences when it comes to light and dark skin, if you're mixed or not, because a lot of people are mixed, and there are people that are not mixed. Yeah. So, you know, that could be seen as being more attractive and something that people would want. But as far as like my family and especially my Chinese side, like they're as Trini as it comes.
Yeah.
So that was never an issue.
That's good to know. Sorry, Shorty, you were going to say something.
I was going to say something. I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because I think that, you know, if I'm just being transparent, and I hate to use this as a reference, but do you remember that like a couple years ago when I showed you that clip? So Iyanla Van Zandt kind of hosted a very similar conversation to this, where she literally brought in, you know, well-known women from different hues, and they had this type of discussion. And I think that one thing that I took away from that discussion was that we often diminish the experience of those who are lighter skinned. And I know that, you know, I didn't realize that, because I feel like, you know, growing up in the context that I did, we were always, and by we I say that in quotation marks, because like Maishi said earlier, you know, I never really fell into the light dark skin. It was always like, oh, Deanna, peanut butter, whatever that means. Peanut butter, caramel, you know, whatever that means. But for all intent and purpose, I was treated as if I was dark skinned. So I think just growing up in the mindset that those who have a lighter hue, y'all don't got struggles. Period.
Yeah.
Like y'all don't have struggles. Like what
Yeah.
struggles do you have?
Right.
None. You have privilege. You have all these things, and I feel like that is a grave. It's just not true. It's just legitimately not true. And I think that watching that clip, you know, just kind of brought to my attention that, you know, first of all, we are all one. And I'm not saying that I'm like, oh, live in light. Like, no, like we are all one. And like we really need to honor and respect the experiences of all of us, and really use that as an opportunity to bind together instead of be divisive. Because historically, that's what we struggle with. We're divisive. Like we often don't know how to come together, gel together, work together. You know, so I think that colorism is just one example of how that has divided us in the past. So, you know,
So unprofessional.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
I do want to say too that I think, I guess speaking specifically to romantic relationships, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preference, because I think it's okay to say, you know, I would prefer, just because it's my preference, I really like dark skinned men, or I really like those who are, I really like those who
Just out there, you know,
You dark
everybody
skin,
out there.
Internet kind of open.
I mean,
Just for clarity's
but I
sake.
think
Single.
it's very important.
Not fake
It's
single.
very
Okay.
important to not do that at the exclusion of others. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preference. Just like I want a man who's tall. You know,
Praise
unfortunately,
God.
that might, you know, exclude some others. But it doesn't mean that I'll never date a short man. Like, he'll never. Don't even try to approach me. You know, like that. You know, I don't think that should be our conversation. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having preferences. So that's.
I think the thing with that is like when people make those preferences, it's not problematic, as you said, if it's just that. But when you attribute value
Right.
Yes.
and worth to those things and
Yeah.
character traits, you know, I had the opportunity to travel, and when I was in South Africa, which has a whole history of issues around colorism and still continues to have some, one thing that I would get a lot was like, oh, you're colored. And so people would say very derogatory things about black people to me. When I corrected them, told them I was black, there was first like a 5 minutes of like, no. And I'm like, no, but yes. Blackness is very diverse. I don't know what you think it is. But at the end, what the conversation would always conclude is, oh, you're not one of those black girls. And it would literally be like, well, what do you mean by that? You know, those dark ones that are all what? Like, you attribute character traits and personality issues and problems, for lack of a better word, to people's skin color. And it's like, literally that has no bearing, no relation at all, cannot.
Intelligence.
Intelligence, cleanliness,
Virility,
just all kinds
all
of
of
things,
that.
ability to be a good mother, ability to be quiet when you need to close your mouth. You know, just anything. It's like these things are not real, but people, they distort those preferences, which are perfectly fine. As you said, like height is something that's important. Ability to grow facial hair is a preference.
Come on.
You know, all of these things are
Have
preferences,
mercy.
and they are fine to have.
Wow.
But I don't say, you, man, that cannot grow facial hair must be lacking in character.
Right.
You cannot do this, because that just isn't true, and that's problematic, because when you believe those things, you ingrain them in the people that come after you. Like, your friends start to think the same. If you have a child, you will then instill that in your child. So I'm sure the friend that you were mentioning, that thought must have come from somewhere, because you don't get that. Like, you don't just come up with that in yourself. Like, whether it was from outside influences, in his surroundings, his own father, his own cousins or brothers, like who knows? But it's like that value judgment on a skin color had to have come from something.
Mercy.
And so I'll go ahead.
No, that just reminds me of, I have cousins. They're all like light skinned. And they always say like, I will, but their parent, I don't know, the genes like, because their parents are, you know, brown. But they always say like, I will never date a black girl. Like, never. And like all of their girlfriends have always been like Hispanic or just like super duper light skin with, you know, like really big curly hair. And they've just like had this really like strong desire to just like not be with a black woman. And it's like, man, did that come from my father and like my uncles and like my grandfather? Like, did they all say like, oh, we do not want black women, even though like my aunts are black, my mother is black, you know, like all of these women are black. And my brother, he went to, you know, an HBCU for college. And I really do think that it's because of that experience that he dates black women and that his girlfriend is currently black, because now he sees the value in dating a black woman, or he sees the value in black women, period. But maybe if he didn't do that, if he went to, you know, like a predominantly white institution, then maybe he would have thought something else. So I think like next steps, like as adults and as women, you know, starting families, like we just have to be very intentional about making sure that our sons and our daughters understand that there is no division between us as black people. Like we are one people.
I do appreciate when people, because there is such a thing within the black community as light skin privilege. And there was a story when Zendaya was offered a role or a part in Black Panther, I think, and she had actually passed it up because she said it would be better if somebody who was like,
Not Zendaya.
Who was it?
Zoe?
Not Zendaya.
The other
Zoe Saldana?
No. Gosh, I don't remember.
Another
She was kind of like a mixed actress.
I know what you're talking about.
And she had passed it up because she wanted somebody who was more appropriate for the part, like somebody with more darker complexion to get it. And Zendaya did make a comment though when she was on a panel, and she was saying like a lot of Hollywood executives want to cast her as the black girl in movies and stuff, and she's like, blackness does not only look like me, like they've accepted her as a standard of blackness, and she's like, that's not true, like we all look very different within the community. And I don't know that there's any other race in the world that has as much genetic diversity as black people do. We're just so amazingly diverse. If I look at my extended family, it's just ridiculous how diverse, from skin color, eye color, hair texture, body type. And you can look at many black families and it's that way. And I'm just thinking how boring the world would be if we all looked like we were from Norway, which is what the standard of beauty is. And I just wish people would just step away from that. No offense, Norwegians are beautiful white people. They really are. But you can't have people from one small country up in the nether regions be the standard of beauty for the entire world, you know? And I just wish, if I want to make one point today, just please stop bleaching your skin. You are killing yourself. It's just a futile attempt at correcting something that does not need to be corrected. And you're going to have to keep putting it on yourself until one day your skin literally falls apart. So it's not worth it. Just learn to love the skin that God has blessed you with. It's literally protecting you from skin cancer, this melanin.
Well, how do you suggest that people deal with this then? Because colorism, it's not going to go away tomorrow. Like, how do people deal with it?
But it starts with people like, it starts with representation. Like Lupita did a lot for a lot of, she said when she went back to Kenya, a lot of women started rocking their short hair again, versus back then when they really all wanted to do a weave and stuff. Because she said that once they saw her in the limelight, they were like, oh, so we can look like ourselves and still be considered beautiful. You know? But that's what I'm saying. Like, it starts with people like her accepting themselves and being thrust into the limelight
and
like
so
that.
You say being thrust, like we take her as this person who, you know, we appreciate her standing out, but someone has to give her that opportunity.
Yes.
So it's really those who are in who are in positions of power, or even people who write books and who illustrate, people who work in media,
who cast people in movies,
people who do makeup,
who
create makeup and allow you know, allow all of us of different hues to have highlight or whatever it is that we need to make ourselves feel better. Or look a certain way.
I think
those are the ones that really should be putting in all of this work.
Yeah, like Beyonce, you guys have all seen it at this point in time.
She has. The Homecoming,
I will. So that performance, I think, was amazing on so many different levels. But one thing that I loved that all of her dancers, they were different. Every
Different
single one of them
hues,
was
yeah.
different.
And body types.
And all of their stockings matched their color, their skin color.
Yeah.
There was not one light-skinned girl that had on dark tights, not one dark-skinned girl that had on light tights, none.
Yep.
They were all matching. And I think that, like Beyonce, of course, pays attention to that because she's lived it. But there are people in power who don't pay attention to that stuff, and they don't really care about it because no one is saying it.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, to your point, Ogechi, people have to be aware of that. But also, when we are in these spaces, like, we have to say these things, like, oh, hey, this is not my foundation, like, or this is not this, or this is not that. And we have to right those wrongs that people are attempting to.
Or for parents too.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, our parents, they have their ideas and they're set. But for those of us that are coming into different stages of our lives, when we have children, allow them, or maybe even not just allow, but instill these notions in them. But also, I'm going to go back to allow them to pursue their creative talents.
Yes.
Because if we don't have people like Lupita in media and Hollywood and things like that, then who are we looking up to? If every one of us is a nurse or a doctor,
it's for African parents.
Nobody's walking out of here saying, you know what, Nurse Ogechi is my hero. Ain't nobody doing that.
Some
They're
people
talking
are.
about, well, I'm just saying though, like, most people are looking to those in the media or those that they see on IG, the football players and things like that. So I'm not saying, like, obviously use your wisdom, but to a certain extent, there's so much power. And, I have a friend who's right now studying in South Korea to be, I forgot what she's doing. There's some, what she's doing. What is it, like some media something where, that sounded terrible, but a journalist or something that's completely different. She's Nigerian. Completely, shout out Amanda, completely different from what most of us have been, led towards and even forced into. So if your kid wants to be a podcaster, on YouTube, let her do that. Let her be representative of what other children need to see. You can have locks and be gorgeous. You can be bald and be gorgeous.
And not smoke weed.
That's another thing. I think the natural hair movement has done a lot for colorism too, because now it's showing, because a lot of there's a specific group of people who really need to be educated, and that's young black men. They need to know that beauty does not come in one shade and one hair type or one body type, and they need to know the diversity that exists that's all beautiful within the black community. And so that's where I think it's not just one thing. There are many different things that we can do that work in tandem to help correct this. And obviously you guys know I'm passionate about hair, and I think that's done a lot to help men see, you know what, you don't need to have Euro standards of hair. You can have that. You can have locks. You can have natural hair. It's all beautiful. It's marvelous.
And there's
I have to be able to like go through. Sometimes it's gonna get stuck.
And that's also anyhow.
You just have to learn how to
finger comb.
Finger comb. That's above me.
It is. Someone made a comment that parents, it would be helpful if they start praising their daughters for attributes other than their beauty. Because a lot of times the little goes, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, and then you keep ingraining in her that this is what matters the most. So if you put her, you're very smart, you're very creative, you're very talented, that says to her more about this is actually what matters. And a YouTuber that I follow, who I love, Jackie Aina, but she's like, she has like 3 million followers on YouTube, and she's a beauty guru if you don't know her. But she literally, like, when they send her the makeup swatches and the foundations, she would do the swatches on her hand, and she'd be like, so between this shade and this shade, you have room. Like, you can have multiple, like, there are black people who can fit in between these shades that you just skipped altogether. And she constantly called out the big makeup brands until some of them started making changes, because look at them, all of them trying to copy Fenty and making like 40 plus shades and stuff. But it took people like her, it took Nima Tang, it took Patricia Bright, it took Alyssa, who's super light skinned. Like, she always tries to say, like, you need to have colors for people who are of different complexion, not just because they focus so much on the light and the beige colors. So I really think that those people are making a difference in their own arena. Not necessarily because they're super light skin or super dark skin, but because they are literally making space for everybody
and I
in
think
the
the
black
problem
diaspora.
is that a lot of people don't think that space, like, there's enough space.
There's plenty of space.
Or some of us who grew up not thinking that any of that was important.
Yes.
So like, you talk about people that are calling out those who are not creating the things that we need, but then it takes people like us. It takes a Black person to be in that place to make those creations. Like, who understands us better than us?
Yeah.
But if we don't think it's important, if our families and our parents don't allow us to go into those places, mom and dad, I want to do makeup. Ha, thunder fire. Let them go do makeup.
Yes, we need more.
World.
Yeah, we need
And
more.
get rich doing it.
And Uoma is a new Nigerian beauty brand. You guys should check them out.
And I think we all have a personal responsibility, just kind of similar to what you said, like just how we all mention like what roles that we have, just from a professional standpoint. Forget what we're passionate about, the gifts that we have outside of that. But even if we just take each of our individual professions, I know for me, being in a space that I am bravely the minority,
We can all relate.
I take it as my personal responsibility to be the best representative that I can be. One for Christ, one for my family, but for the conversation, as a minority, as a Black person, as someone who's not lighter skinned. Like, I take that upon myself every day to make sure that I'm the best representative that I can be. And I think that if we all take that personal charge, that personal responsibility, even if it's at the grocery store, if it's at the mall, if it's at work, if it's at play, church, whatever your context is, if we just taking that personal responsibility, I think is one. I think someone asked earlier, like, what can we do to create change? What can we do to, make progress? Because this is something that we have struggled with societal-wise for a long time. So I think it just starts with self. Like, what can I do day by day that can help push this forward for us to be more united?
Yes. And on that note, it's a perfect ending, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you.
The youngest of us all has led us with the closing word.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Thank you to my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me. And hopefully we can move forward, as Sherelle has charged us with, from this issue and be more united as a community.
Can I make a non-biased plug? If you have not listened to the rest of the episodes on
Come on, somebody.
That's right.
What are you waiting
I
for?
encourage you right now. Pause wherever you are, whether it be your car, your work. Pause right now.
Yes.
This episode is ending, so just go ahead and keep strolling to the other episodes. I'm telling you, you will be blessed. You will be educated. You will be uplifted.
And
You
it's
might even
nice
laugh.
to put a face to the name and to the voice. So now that you've seen our beautiful Miss Inyoma, now you can go back and listen, and you'll be able to, think about what her mannerisms are like as she speaks.
So we're on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and CastBox. So check us out. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.